What's the worst thing you've eaten out of politeness? Story 1. The plate. I was in India and was presented with this incredible pile of food on a palm leaf. There were no knives or forks, and someone told me to just use your fingers, like it's a tortilla, so I assumed you wrapped up the food like a tortilla and ate the whole thing. You don't, he meant just eat with your fingers, not like a tortilla. Edit. Thank you everyone. Now I know how Stallone felt when he asked what the 3 seashells did in Demolition Man, and it was probably a banana leaf. I'm from the UK, so tropical foliage is not an area of expertise. Story 2. I have a very sweet neighbor. She's an elderly Armenian lady who lives with her son. Sometimes when he's out of town she asks me to help little things. One day I went over to set up her Wi-Fi. She gave me an Armenian soft drink that was tarragon flavored. Wasn't expecting that. I was very polite and said mm. Encouraged by this, she then gave me some soup. I don't know what it was called, but it was hella sweet, kind of like a fruit roll-up. I finished all of it because she's such a sweet woman, but oh boy. Story 3. You know that gif where a Russian soldier holds the plate above his head and the food doesn't fall off? It was something similar. Edit. Story 4. I was visiting my boyfriend's family for the first time, a Thanksgiving holiday for my freshman year of college. His aunts were cooking the meal all day, smoking cigarettes all the way through. I took a bite of mashed potatoes that had cigarette ash in it and almost vomited in my mouth, but couldn't figure out how to politely get it out of my mouth without pointing out what had happened and embarrassing her, so I just swallowed. Story 5. TLDR. Plastic, a disposable takeaway food container lid, or at least most of it. My grandmother is not a good cook, quite the opposite, but she thinks she's a gourmet chef, and she's very sensitive about her cooking. My grandmother gave me a big bowl of soup. I took one spoonful, stopped, and insisted that something was wrong. Too much fish, some kind of seafood, maybe some ingredient had gone bad. I got yelled at, screaming, top of the lungs, yelled at. I asked my grandmother, no seriously, have you tasted this? Of course she had, she replied. The soup was fine, so I finished the soup, every last drop, because it was the polite thing to do. It was incredibly awful, but I figured the soup had to be okay, just particularly foul tasting for whatever reason. For obvious reasons, my family has the ability to choke down food while ignoring the taste and any urge to vomit. Of course, the truth was, she hadn't tasted the soup, she just lied and said she did, in order to win the argument. To be fair, she did apologize when she discovered the melted remains of the plastic container at the bottom of the pot. This didn't make me feel better. Story 6. The top 3 layers of it weren't that bad: toasted slivered almonds, cream cheese, candied cherries. The bottom layer, steamed fish. To this day I still have no idea what that was supposed to be. Story 7. Still moving raw octopus tentacles. When someone looks you in the eye and says, you must chew many times or you die, then you might not be eating the best dish in the world. Edit. Yes, this was in Korea, during my first tour here. I was with a bunch of other people having a get-together with some locals, and we all got super drunk on soju at this giant barbecue. Anyway, once everyone was good and sloshed, they brought out this plate of something out of my nightmares. These things were still wiggling around, and because of the specific purpose of this get-together, I had to indulge our hosts. Anyway, I don't really remember fine details, just that I chewed for probably 2 minutes straight out of sheer terror, then swallowed. I don't really remember a specific taste. After that, we were hanging out of the windows of our car on the way home, vomiting on the highway. No more tentacles for this guy. Story 8. Grass that are turning into, no seriously, it is called nyobi, and you gotta feed the cow with grass, then butcher it and get the grass in its stomach and intestine out, squeeze the juice out of it, and boil it with beef and vegetables. Would never try this again. Story 9. 8. With a very poor Iban family in East Malaysia. They served curry chicken, which was awesome, boiled grass and gutter fish. I watched them walk outside and pick handfuls of grass from the side of the road and toss it in boiling water. Tasted like boiled grass. Surprise, surprise. The fish was caught from the gutters, also outside the house. It was a trash fish that eats sewage and trash that runs into the gutters and tasted like a porta potty smells. I ate the whole thing. It was all they had and I was amazed that they were willing to share. Story 10. While at a restaurant I ordered chili. My mother looked at me and said, you don't like chili? Why would you order that? I said, I just don't like your chili. She seemed upset. Story 11. My husband was once invited to a dinner in Japan with some senior executives of the client's company. They ordered cow's tongue, which I believe was also raw. My husband said they all watched to see if he would eat it, and so out of politeness, he did. Then, fancying himself quite the comedian, said this must be what it feels like to French kiss a cow. The joke was not received well. Story 12. My grandfather's cousin was dating a man who died quite suddenly and left her heartbroken. Grandfather goes to her house to support her. I go to support my grandfather. She's a mess, but brings us 2 glasses of what looks like water. It's not, it's cactus juice. I'm not sure what cactus juice is supposed to taste like, but this tastes like a handful of salt left out in the desert for a month and then strained through a sandal. The 2 of us sip at this horrific drink, nodding politely and trying to hide the fact that we're gagging. We finish the drinks quickly and put them down. She fills them again before asking, and here we go again. Many tears flowed that evening. Story 13. Pig's face for Christmas. Lived in a former Soviet country for a while. It's considered traditional, just a boiled pig's head, no seasoning, mostly fat and cartilage, but once you drink enough, you'll eat the face. Edit. Thanks Gold Stranger. Bonus meal out of politeness: heart, liver and kidney soup. Made from the unhappiest, most starvingest cows you'll ever see, strong blood and iron flavor, water for seasoning, eaten with lots of alcohol. Story 14. My mother-in-law on one of our first meetings made a terrible meal for my wife and I to welcome me into the family. Now this woman hated cooking and took that out on the food. She was an Irish home cook who would put the vegetables in about 6 hours before the meal if left to her own devices so they'd taste of nothing come the meal. She'd then drink the water they were boiled in, which, disguising as it sounds, was probably really tasty and full of nutrients and flavor that had boiled out of the veg. Anyway, this one meal was a stir-fry. She didn't have a recipe for stir-fry, but how hard could it be, methods in the name, so she put a bunch of veg in a frying pan. Didn't have any oriental spices, but she had ginger wine. And then for the noodles she had some dried super noodles. If you're not in the UK, think the least authentic, most anglicized version of ramen. After a while this all wasn't coming together how she wanted, so she put it all in the oven and baked it. Baked stir-fry. And yeah, it was foul. Crisped up instant noodles, flavorless veg and the gloopy remains of the concentrated down ginger wine. But I wanted to appear respectful, so I tucked into about half of it before I noticed my wife and her mum had both taken one bite and then just stopped eating. We sent out for a Chinese instead. Story 15. One of my friends and her mother once made a cake from scratch for another friend's birthday. It looked awesome and so delicious. It had a lot of cream on top and mangoes inside, only the mangoes certainly weren't edible anymore. I took one bite and almost gagged. She and her mother ate it without problems. I have no idea how they didn't notice. And then she immediately asked us how we like it. She looked us directly into the eyes and she seemed so excited and happy. I looked over to my friend, the one who celebrated her birthday, and could tell immediately that she fought with it too, but kept her cool much better than I, and we both exclaimed how delicious and great it tasted. I then went on to store the cake in my mouth like a rodent, and then excused myself to the bathroom and spit it into the toilet. Story 16. My then 9-year-old son wanted to cook dinner for the family. He decided he could make spaghetti, and I helped him a little bit. Anyway, while adding a little pepper to the sauce, the top came off the pepper shaker and the entire contents went into the sauce. Kid was heartbroken. I called out for pizza and everybody had pizza that night except me. I had spaghetti and ate every bite. Edit. My son tried to cover up his mistake. There wasn't anything left to scoop out of the sauce. Story 17. Duck eggs with the duck still in them, and some kind of soup made out of pig's blood and guts. Dated a Filipino girl in high school. Met her parents. Her mom asked me to come have dinner at their house. GF was in the background making a crazy face and subtlety shaking her head. I didn't catch the hint and said yes. Apparently, I wasn't the first white guy she dated, and this wasn't the first time her parents played this joke. Yuck. Story 18. Sheep's brain. So most of my extended family live in a developing country in pretty farm-y areas. I'm talking you greet the sheep at the gate and then bid farewell when you empty your plate. We don't visit often, so it's a big deal when we do. When we rocked up, we could tell that they'd recently slaughtered something. There's a certain smell to warm blood and we're busy preparing it into a feast fit for a king. No joke, my aunt is the greatest cook in the hemisphere. She used to earn a living cooking for 3,000 people. Indian weddings. Supper time rolls around and we're not disappointed. The table creaked under the weight of the 8 different dals. Countless chutneys, curried veg, roti and papadums piled high on massive copper plates. The piece de resistance was, of course, a massive pot of lamb biryani cooked on the gas stove outside. Cooked to perfection with the bottom just very slightly burnt to give the dish its fabulous smoky aroma. Right next to it was a small dish of what I thought was cauliflower. Being the polite guests that we are, we of course have to try everything. And I decide to start with the cauliflower, like a fool. So I tear a piece of my roti, roll a good dab of the cauliflower with my fingers, and prepare for one of the few meals that would shorten my expected lifespan by roughly a decade. Worth it. And it was just... ugh, how to describe it. Imagine a white floury paste mixed with sand. Except that sand rasps oddly against your tongue while the paste makes for the back of your throat and sticks there just long enough for you to regret everything leading up to this moment. Now just image that against this textural nightmare is the perfect balance of delicious spice, salt and acid. Taunting you, of course I ate it, and laughed and complimented the dish while secretly crying inside. My aunt, delighted, spoons out another ladle of brains on my plate and sits back to enjoy my enjoyment. It took a lot of biryani to wash that horrible taste out of my mouth. What was worse was the little sandy beads would get stuck in weird places in your mouth and resurface hours later when you were trying to enjoy dessert. Even now when I go to visit, my aunt asks me if she must cook the brains I enjoyed the last time I came. I always tell her I'm cutting back on red meat, so chicken will be just fine. Story 19. Roasted duck head. It is offered to guests in China. I didn't know I could say no thanks and someone else would have happily eaten it in my place. Also snake alcohol, more specifically high-proof alcohol with an actual snake or multiple snakes in the bottle, for you to look at as you drink it and try not to vomit. I vomited. True story. Story 20. I hate coffee. My friend's mom made some ice cream from scratch and was super proud of it. She asked if I wanted some and I enthusiastically said yes. She brings it out and tells me it's espresso, but she used 3 times the amount of coffee because she is a caffeine junkie. I ate it and said it was great, but it was the most potent thing I've ever had. Story 21. I had a Russian friend and his mother would cook interesting food for us when I was over playing video games. Well, there are 2 dishes I really didn't like that she made: borscht and buckwheat meal. Borscht is beets with onion soup served cold, and for the buckwheat meal I just got to say no one should eat it. I was polite and ate as much as I could, because she was very sweet and a single mother, She actually got me to try sushi at my friend's birthday and I loved it. To be honest, I tried a lot of food because of her. I think she was a great cook and I always had food when I was hanging out with my bud, which was a godsend so many times. Story 22. My sister once made hamburger helper stroganoff with ground chicken breast. It was so incredibly flavorless and the meat was so dry. I pretended it was fine, she had to hate it too. Story 23. Went to a friend's house. His mom was making lasagna. She asked if I wanted to stay for dinner. I said yes because at this time in my life lasagna was my favorite food. My grandma always made a great 7-cheese lasagna. It comes out, it only had 2 noodles, a top and a bottom. Sandwiched between those noodles was an inch-thick layer of unseasoned ground beef. That's it, the only thing inside was some gross hamburger. Then to top it off, American cheese melted on the top. My little cousin once made me a sandwich when he was about 6 years old. It was like 5 slices of bologna, slathered with probably like 14 of the jar of mayo, I hate mayo, and a single slice of American cheese on white bread. It was the absolute worst sandwich I ever ate, but I ate it with a smile because he was so proud of having made it. Story 24. We're at my nephew's wedding in rural Cambodia, where UK. Now, I watched them cooking the food, beautiful slabs of whole huge fish, all sorts of things, most frying in these huge woks over wooden fires. Many courses of this food were proffered, and it was mostly chicken heads, tripe soup. They used every bit of the animal and nothing went to waste. But Jesus Christ, having to smile while eating it was torture. The saving grace was the fish. They were fried whole and they were gorgeous. Story 25. Squirrel pot pie. A friend's grandmother made for Thanksgiving at my middle-of-nowhere college, and some type of brain in Japan. Went out with hostel workers and they ordered me a ton of local food to try. They didn't even eat the brains and at the end kept asking if I wanted to finish it. I threw it all up the next day. Worst throw up ever. Story 26. A chicken curry my friend made. I'm sure a lot of people would adore his cooking, but it was just so spicy my mouth couldn't taste anything else. I ate it really fast to get it over with because it was painful. I didn't want to not eat it because he spent a lot of time cooking it. I ended up eating a banana when no one was around to get the fire out of my mouth. Story 27. Mettbrötchen in Germany. It's raw mince, usually mixed with spices, on a bread roll. My friend was so excited. I ended up eating the whole thing even though every bite made me think of brainworms. Story 28. I helping this old lady with some problem she had with one of her roof tiles. It took a while and it was a hot day, so she invited me for something to drink. She brought some cinnamon buns and some juice. Everything was looking really nice. I took a bun, which was nice but probably a week old, so it was really stale, and she poured a rather big glass with some strawberry juice. She probably had never washed that glass ever, since you could see fat flakes floating around inside the glass, some as big as the thumb. As I was drinking it, I could feel the gritty liquid pouring down my throat, and I had never been so close of throwing up, but I managed to keep myself from it. That was probably one of my most pleasantly unpleasant experiences I've ever had with juice, unhealthy dishes and old people. Story 29. My nana is keen to exotic food and our family is from French descent, so I've had some weird food. Cow's tongue, frog's legs, crocodile, armadillo, to know if it's the right translation from tattoo, beef tartar, always eating with a smile on my face to please my Vav. Story 30. Edamame peels and fish bones. I think it was the first meal at my ex-girlfriend's house with her family, a religious meal sort of. With the fish bones I just could not bring myself to pull the bones out or spit them, so out of politeness, I tried swallowing them. I will never forget the scratching in my throat as I tried forcing down the bones. With the edamame peels, I didn't know you should dispose of the peels, so I tried swallowing them. It hurt badly, and I silently panicked. Same meal. Story 31. Visited a friend in Texas. This being Texas, a barbecue was thrown for the weekend because of me. It was amazing, except my friend forgot to tell his family I was a vegetarian. I managed to avoid eating meat most of the party, but at one point his father came up to me and gave me a couple of those big red sausages. I was planning to get rid of it discreetly, but his father then took me under his arm to meet the whole family. It was fun, but the fact that I was holding a plate of untouched sausage was causing some weird looks, so to avoid disappointing my friend's family, I ended up eating the meat. Big mistake. I hadn't eaten meat for 6 years and my system was completely unprepared for it. I ended up with a bad case of diarrhea for the first part of my visit. His family found out and ended up apologizing profusely. Even if that wasn't their fault, they even made me a few vegetarians dinners while I was there, which was amazing of them. Story 32. I was in a small town in central China, staying with a friend and her family. Her mum put on a massive spread of food and it all looked interesting. Anyway, one of them was duck and it was hard to find decent pieces of meat in the dish. I found what I thought was a nice piece of breast meat, but it had a weird texture. Just as I was swallowing it, I was told that the dish contained the entire duck eyeballs and all, and that I'd just eaten its brain. I did my best Joey from Friends acting and politely declined anymore. Still get the boke thinking about it. Story 33. Raw chicken, sashimi style. I was living in a host family in Japan and it was Christmas. My host mother wanted me to taste everything on the table. It was very disgusting, taste and texture. Story 34. I ate road salt. My neighbor's mother tried to convince me it was a mint, and she pretended to eat a piece, but it was really obvious she hadn't. However, since I was a child who tried to please adults and didn't really believe that one could be malicious, I put it in my mouth. I ran home and spit it out in a snowbank when I was sure she wasn't looking. My neighbor's family seemed to enjoy playing practical jokes that I didn't understand because they simply weren't funny. Story 35. I spent years hating pizza because my grandmother used to buy frozen mini pizzas from I don't know what shop, probably someplace extremely cheap when I was a kid, and the taste of it was evil, so I spent years thinking that pizza always tasted like it, but I was a very polite kid so I always had a bit. But I would always say that I hated pizza so nobody else would serve pizza to me. One day at university, yes. It took me until I was past 18 for it to change. I was at a friend's place and everybody was having it too, so I was polite again and had some. I couldn't believe it was the real taste of pizza. Now I love it, of course. Story 36. While on one of my first deployments to Iraq, we spent a lot of time visiting families. They were very gracious and loved to give us all the smokes we can smoke and all the tea we can drink. They were also huge into feeding us. I had a bunch of stuff that tasted amazing and loved it. Until I sat down with some village elders and was given some sheep. The meat was quite tasty, slightly gamey. But the main elder wanted me to try the best little morsel he had to offer, the eyes. Now, I am grateful I have a story to tell, but I will never eat that again. The taste was not the issue was the texture. It popped and oozed in my mouth. There wasn't enough tea in the world that could make my mouth forget that experience. The worst part, all the laughing that was going on as I powered through it, it wasn't a tasty morsel, it was a joke. Those dudes don't eat that. Story 37. My mom is usually a pretty good cook, but this one time I was visiting her and my sister for the evening and she made this god-awful red sauce pasta abomination. I seriously don't even know what it was. I muscled down the first few bites out of politeness, and I could tell my sister was struggling as well. Thankfully, after a few bites, my mom even said, "Wow, this is very bad," and ordered some pizza. One-off meal in however many years. Can't blame her. Story 38. Half a lemon. It was lemon chicken and I thought it was horrifically lemony, but I soldiered on through it all. My friend's mum was like, "Geez, Rivermonkey, you must have been hungry. You've eaten the lemon." 210 would not knowingly repeat. Story 39. Steak tartare at a restaurant in Poland. As I mixed the raw egg into the raw meat, I somehow convinced myself taking a drink of wine after every bite would kill any bacteria. Yeah, right. Of course it took me a week to realize I was supposed to be violently sick from salmonella or E. coli. Story 40. Garlic bread and God knows wool soup. My mum was making soup and didn't realize we had no garlic until it was too late, so she pulled a garlic bread baguette out of the freezer, microwave defrosted it and blended it into the soup. It could have worked, maybe. The soup was the color of the Hulk and every now and again you get a mouthful of pure garlic buttery stuff. I've no idea what the soup was before. Story 41. Many years ago, new neighbors moved in. The husband said privately that we should never accept a dinner invitation from his wife. Because her cooking wasn't particularly good, we would occasionally invite our neighbors over for dinner, and the wife would ask us over to reciprocate. Her husband would normally intervene saying, "Sorry, but I have a meeting that night," or something similar to save us from the unknown that was her cooking. Eventually, my wife ended up accepting an invitation to their house for dinner. The menu was lasagna and a salad. Sounded fairly innocuous. Even a poorly made lasagna is normally edible. The wife decided to serve the lasagna from the casserole dish at the table. It looked mostly normal so far, so good, but it quickly went downhill from there. When she served the first piece, the noodles made a cracking sound. The husband rolled his eyes and passed the first piece to my wife. The rest of us were served, and began eating. The first bite was absolutely horrid. I asked how she made the lasagna, and she proudly said that the sauce was ketchup, and the cheese was cottage cheese. She layered in the noodles straight from the box because they cook in the oven. Somehow, I managed to choke down the portion I was served, but my wife could only eat a little of hers because she had a big lunch, and said he likes it a lot, so he can finish what I didn't eat, and slid her plate over my way. Worst lasagna ever. Forgot to mention the salad. Leaves of iceberg lettuce peeled straight off the head, not washed. Lots of little black, that were in pepper. Fortunately she forgot it in the kitchen until we were clearing the table. Story 42. Rotten shark. Genealogical family excursion to Iceland to meet people we discovered were distant blood relatives. They happened to own a fishery on the northern coast. Well, gotta try the local delicacy. It tastes like soggy chicken soaked in. As soon as I bit down on it, my cheeks got a tingly feeling as my jaw locked in place. Pretty sure it was a message from my gut telling my mouth, "You better not swallow whatever's in there." I managed to choke it down eventually, but there were a couple people with us that went for seconds. Props to them because I couldn't imagine eating it again. Story 43. Not me, but my friend was in Mongolia for a brief time. He was offered some uncooked meat. He figured one bite wouldn't hurt and felt like it would be rude to refuse. He was wrong. He was hospitalized and now has IBS 010. Story 44. I'm Irish. My ex was Polish, and one year we spent Christmas with his family in Poland. Indiana, Ireland. Our Christmas dinner is usually turkey, ham, stuffing, potatoes, other vegetables, and then pudding. I absolutely love Christmas dinner. It's my favorite part of Christmas. Anyway, in Poland, as I found out, their dinner is fish and cabbage and soup. I hate fish. I hate cabbage slightly less than fish, but still hate it, or more accurately, I can't stand the smell of it. So anyway, myself, the ex, and his dad took a walk into the center of Zoyersee on the 24th. People were selling live carp from inflatable swimming pools in the streets. We bought one, brought it home, they killed and cooked it and served the dinner. His whole family were there, grandparents, cousins, etc. I had to eat it. Then his mom gave me a scale from the fish and said to keep it for good luck. I excused myself, went to the bathroom and threw up. I felt awful, and the worst part is that I was the center of attention, so everyone was wanting to get photographs with me, etc., and I couldn't get away from anyone for too long. Story 45. My mother used to lose at least one fake fingernail in the Thanksgiving or Christmas turkey stuffing. It got to be almost like finding the baby in the king cake at Easter. I thought it was the grossest thing ever. She wasn't bothered. Story 46. When I was 12, I had a girlfriend and I had dinner at her place. Her mom served me applesauce and a fried egg. I liked applesauce a lot, and fried egg as well, but the combination of the two is horrible. It tastes like metal, so her mom was either not much of a cook, or she didn't like me. That same year we went on a holiday in Italy, and we were invited to have dinner at this small village mayor's house, where us kids were served polenta. That was not a big success either. Story 47. Sanksu. I was living in rural West Africa on a development project, and one day my neighbors came banging on my door. They were excited to have a sanksu on the grill and were throwing a party. They really wanted me to join in, have some drinks, and have some of the sanksu. My language was pretty good, close to fluent, but I had never heard that word before. But my neighbors were stoked about it and I couldn't be rude. I didn't ask what a sanksu was. Sanksu was the nastiest thing I've ever tasted. Slimy, greasy, disgusting meat that tasted like the dregs of a latrine. I've never tasted the dregs of a latrine, but I don't need to because I tasted sanksu. As I politely eat my piece of sanksu, trying not to vomit, I slowly realize that the chunk of meat I'm eating has a hand and a prehensile thumb. Turns out sanksu wasn't a word in the local language, just the nickname they gave to a rhesus monkey before they shot it and put it on the grill. Story 48. A few months back, I was in Ecuador. Only knowing how to say 2 beers please in Spanish and the small villages not speaking English at all, I ordered juice at a local restaurant. The nice waitress started talking Spanish to me, and I panicked, so I said yes to the first thing she said, hoping that I actually ordered some kind of juice. A few moments later, the lady came back with a big glass of tree tomato juice, which apparently people drink in South America. Story 49. Gluten-free, vegan eggplant lasagna. I'm a vegetarian and I don't normally mind eggplant, but the eggplant in this particular recipe wasn't meant to replace the noodles. It basically turned into dye-flavored, slimy brownish soup. It had also been baked ahead of time, but only got partially reheated, so it was also cold in the middle. I did what I could, but wound up trying to hide it in my cheeks without being too obvious. Once everyone was in bed, I snuck down and ate peanut butter. Story 51. Time. My grandmother made ham and grape jelly sandwiches that she heated up in the oven. I'm not really sure what was going through her head at the moment, but I ate one and pretended to enjoy it. Story 51. Whale blubber. It was a day dedicated to the Alaska Native culture, and no one in the class wanted to taste the little cubes of whale blubber. The girl looked really sad, so I tried some and politely acknowledged that it was an acquired taste. Story 52. My niece's easy bake oven pretzel. OMG, I think she couldn't have added more salt to it. She also added cheese, which tasted like chemical disgusting. I had to pretend it was so good. Story 53. Really underdone chops. It was like my mother-in-law gave them the old ahi tuna sear job. She's usually a really good cook, so when she didn't address it herself, everyone decided to just sit there and not hurt her feelings. Story 54. Traditional English trifle. A layered dish with layers of ladyfingers, jam, custard, more ladyfingers, beef sautéed with peas and onions, more custard, bananas, and whipped cream. Story 55. Gefilte fish. I was raised in a Moroccan Jewish home, so gefilte fish was unheard of. One time at a friend's house, who is more European in his family, offered me a slice of it, suggested I top it with horseradish. I never turn down food ever. I always try something at least once. Snails, frogs, fermented fish, entrails, you name it. Gefilte fish is one thing I will never try again. I gagged and spat it out at the table. Felt horrible, but I wasn't about to ingest that. It's like eating a super sweet boiled fish meatball. Story 56. My mom accidentally made a cake with cumin instead of cinnamon once, and fed it to everyone at her work. We didn't realize till I tried a piece and went, "Mom, why does your cake taste like curry?" Everyone at her work had been too polite to comment on it. Story 57. This was in the 7th grade. I'm 34 now and I can still taste it. I was at a friend's house. His mom made homemade mac and cheese, my favorite. And so simple, how can you it up? Answer, if you cook the noodles until they've lost all the firmness, like 15 minutes past al dente they turn into a mush. Then, my guess is she must have just dropped 3 or 4 slices of American cheese into the boiling water, and let that be the cheese sauce, so it was mushy noodles that were swimming in cheese water. I ate 2 bites out of politeness and almost threw up. I just sat at the table looking pale after that, just staring at this disgusting soup with a look of horror. You don't like the mac and cheese? She asked. No, I'm sorry, I couldn't take it. I just sat there awkwardly while they drank their mac and cheese. Story 58. It's referred to as the purse of a goat. It's a freshly acquired goat stomach that been turned inside out and cleaned that is then stuffed with goat intestine, tied off, and then boiled with no seasoning. I hated it. Story 59. Not me, but my dad. We were at a family gathering, Thanksgiving or Christmas or something of the like, and while we were waiting for the main meals, everyone was chowing down some appetizers. One of them was an artichoke, a food my dad had never eaten and never ever heard of. This was a long time ago. Everyone was talking about how great it was, so he went to try it. People started to notice he was having a hard time with it. He didn't know you weren't supposed to eat the entire leaf part, and was trying to eat it for a few minutes. people started to notice and eventually someone bust out laughing. To this day he turns red if anyone mentions this story. Story 60 was staying with a host family while learning French for a few months. They served me snails as a special meal. I ate it all to be polite, but I'm not sure I was able to give them the reaction to it that they were looking for. If the sauce is the attraction in a meal that involves snails, why not serve the sauce with something more pleasant? Story 61. My fiancée's aunt boiled chops and served them up. It looked like gray matter. We still joke about it to this day, and that was 4 years ago. If she ever makes them again, I'm going to say that is against my religion. Story 62. In middle school, at my girlfriend's house, her grandmother made us peanut butter and jelly and put 4 thick slabs of cold butter on each sandwich. I nearly vomited all over. Why? Just why? Story 63. Worked in a restaurant, and the chef, a really good chef I might add, knocked up some stuffed vine leaves for the staff to try. He'll try most things, but I don't think I'd have them again. They were cold, clammy, very oily. I'm not sure if they were authentic or not, but my taste buds were hardly dancing. Story 64. A June beetle. It flew into my mouth while I was in the middle of a high ropes course. It would have been impolite to the belayers for me to freak out, flail around, and fall, so down the hatch it went. It was horrible and alive. Story 65. Seeded toast. It was at some point in my teenage years. I knew I didn't like it before that day, but on that day I discovered that I am allergic to sesame seeds. Story 66. Mushroom stew. Without a doubt. Was at a friend's house a few years ago and his mom did this stew and it smelled horrible and tasted like salt, but everyone else in the family loved it. If it's one thing I don't want to eat in foodways, it's mushrooms.